Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Southampton, part of the Global Sports Podcast Network. My name is Zach Ingo Finch and I am your host today. The reason that there might be a bit of a weird cut-out delay there is that I totally forgot that, despite the fact that we're all here, that I would be the one hosting, despite the fact Greg asked me about 3 seconds ago. So Greg, Oscar, how you doing, guys?
I'm doing all right, mate.
Let's just say the out-of-season heat is getting to me a little bit. So it's Wednesday, which, as much as it used to be Wildcard Wednesday, has now just become Zach talks about a potential manager that we've been linked with and does everything he possibly can to avoid talking about Gary O'Neill and Steven Gerrard.
I like to think of it as Zach putting his history degree to the use it always wanted.
I mean, at this point, mate, it's more use than it was getting beforehand, which, as harrowing as that is, it's just a fact of life when it comes to a humanities degree. But yeah, so today we're going to talk about Bristol City manager Liam Manning. So, what do we know about Liam Manning, guys, other than the fact that his team recently just got knocked out by Sheffield United from the playoffs? I'm going to
assume no relation to Ryan Manning.
No, but there are a lot of Saints crossovers that we'll see that are a bit weird. But I look forward to telling you all about that.
I saw his post match, I think last week after the game, where he expressed some of his frustration about the refereeing.
I watched that game and I kind of agree with him. I don't understand how that happened. I feel like you could have gone out and tried a little bit harder in the second leg off the back of it, but it is what it is. They massively overachieved, and that is one of the reasons I think he's being linked with so many jobs, including ours. So let's just crack on. Born in 1985, he is 39. So kind of on that trend of us hiring a young and upcoming manager, not had a significantly large amount of clubs that he's been at previously. As I said, currently the manager of Bristol City. And, there wasn't really much of a expectation for him to get promoted this season, but they did give it a good go. And obviously that was a big thing. So he did have a career in football before he got into coaching. It was at a professional level, but it was all sort of like non-league. So he originally joined Norwich's academy before moving to Ipswich, which is quite controversial considering they're kind of rivals. But spent a year there as a professional, but never got a game before being released in 2005. And that's when he dropped into non-league, played for Bishop Stortford, Long Melford, Leiston, before going over to Iceland. And I'm not going to lie, looking at those names, they feel like they're out of like a children's fable. It's like, I can't say that I know where any of these places are or anything about these teams. But he even went over and played in Iceland for a little bit before coming back to play for Woodbridge, Wroxham, which, again, not debunking the idea that these are like fabled towns, and Ipswich Wanderers, before eventually retiring and getting into coaching. So he has a bit of a playing career. I have no idea where most of these places are apart from maybe Ipswich, just roughly. But obviously off the back of that, he went on to join West Ham's under-21s, is what Transfer Market says. Under-23s is what Wikipedia says, and it's kind of hard to pin down. Youth setup, I guess, is the main sort of thing, but not under-18s, above the under-18s. So he was with them for quite a long time and ended up coming into the under-21s as becoming the under-21s manager in 2018. So he was there, like, kind of doing a bit of coaching, and then was sort of became an assistant. So he rose through the ranks, considering he came from sort of non-league football, and it obviously showed that he had a bit more of an aptitude towards coaching. There is a lot of links to him and a lot of praise around him for being one of the people that was key in the development of Declan Rice. So I don't know if that's just noise. It's like kind of articles that are linking to it. I think I've got a link to it in the description if I remember to send Greg all the links this time and don't have to manually edit it at like 1 a.m. But yeah, so that's a thing that apparently he is credited as having a hand in. But then he ended up leaving West Ham, weirdly, to go to the City Football Group, which you'll know obviously for Manchester City and New York City, where, like, if you remember rightly, all of this kind of weird intermingling championship stuff where Frank Lampard played for a little bit when he was on loan at City, which was bizarre. And yeah, he became like originally their director of coaching, but then eventually became their like academy director. So it's kind of like, I'm guessing he did a really good job at West Ham and then kind of managed to kind of jump into what I would consider quite senior roles quite early on. From that kind of jump from coaching, like you've worked a lot in coaching, Oscar, as well. Like I don't know, I feel like that's kind of insane to go from sort of non-professional league kind of straight into something, so a team like sort of West Ham after doing a little bit.
It is unusual. Like to go straight into the 23s, usually, especially if you've not been a player. I mean, it's not unheard of if you're an ex-player for that to happen. But for a non-player to go straight in at that level, it would have also depended on his badges and how he managed to get his badge. I mean, potentially if he was in Iceland and did it out there, that makes a bit of sense. But if not, if he hasn't been fast forwarded, then it must just go to show that they showed a lot of faith in him, and he's demonstrated some good qualities to be accelerated.
Exactly that. So, like, after being the academy director, he managed to get his first role in coaching. It was like actual management, where he went, say actual management, you know what I mean? Actual manager of a football club. And it's kind of weird where some of the parallels across some of the other candidates we're looking at, like Will Steele, where he ended up going to the Belgian league. So it was the Belgian First Division B, which is basically just their championship. At one point, I'm pretty sure they just called it the second league. Why they decided to change that to a more confusing name, who knows? But he went to take charge of Lommel SK. He managed to get a side that was bottom to third in the table at the end of the 2020 to 21 season. So, like, we fast forwarded quite a bit and had all of his kind of coaching career at the different places out of the way. And you kind of really realize, like, oh man, this guy's coaching career is only sort of 5 years long, but we'll see how kind of exciting it is. But I think that's kind of where we're being linked with. A lot of the people we've been linked with are very much sort of, it's only been the last sort of 5 or 6 years they've done stuff, and we're knowing who they are. As much as I know you, Greg, want Sam Allardyce and keep. I can't work out if it's to wind me up at this point or semi realistic. Whatever. Don't answer that question.
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I wouldn't be disappointed with it as a sign-in. I think that it speaks volumes about the quality of manager that's available at the moment, and perhaps the price tag on any of the sort of managers that you would be hoping for. And it's pretty clear that what we're going to be going for is potential. It's just that, once again, that comes with risk, doesn't it?
Yeah, we'll get into it some more, and there are definitely some links to Russell Martin, and I'll kind of talk about how his time at Lommel SK was and where he moved afterwards, after a word from our partners at Bioniq.
Your body is unique, and Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements, designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
Wonderful. So we are back where we left off. Manning had just sort of taken over Lommel SK. Again, he managed to get them from third up to third from bottom. So third in the league is where they finished. Bottom was where he started. And during his 28 matches in charge, he won 14, drew 3, lost 11, and managed an average of 1.61 points per game in charge. Now, I don't know how much credence I give to this stat. I keep marking it down, and I don't know why. I think it's just because it's something that you can kind of benchmark seasons against. However, it is one of those situations where that's obviously always going to change depending on how long somebody's at a place, right? Because you could end up being like, his average is 2 points per game, and it's like, yeah, he only was at a club for like 5 games. But he kind of seems to have roughly the same sort of period of time at each club. The fact that this is, 2020, 2021, and we've still got a couple of clubs to go, shows you that he's moved around quite a lot in those years. So after he managed to get them, obviously, up to third, he then moved on to a different challenge where he went to League One. And this is where he took over MK Dons in the 2021 to 2022 season. Now, this is where I talked about the Saints links, kind of adjacent. He replaced former Southampton manager Russell Martin at MK Dons. So Russell Martin had a bit of a rough season at MK Dons, but he left to go to Swansea. So obviously Swansea offered him the job. There was also the whole COVID thing. So it was kind of, we'll talk about some of the ways that his football has been described later, but I'm not going to say more of the same, because when he moved there, after his first 11 games, he managed to win Manager of the Month for September, managed to get 11 points in a run of 5 league games. And he also managed to win Manager of the Month in January 2022 as well. So, like, clearly with a sort of similar run, so clearly doing some good work. There was a bit of a sad thing where they managed to get third place. They missed automatic promotion by a singular point, which is always difficult because we know how important fine margins are, especially how important fine margins are going to be in the Championship. I don't think that I can attribute these kind of things to simply him, but also, like, it sucks, right? And they lost to Wycombe Wanderers in the playoffs following a poor start to the season. The next season, he was then let go in December 2022 after only 15 points from 20 matches. So who knows why? Combination of potentially players that let go, disappointment after the highs of almost reaching the playoffs, we know how that can be for some clubs. You know, there are some clubs where it's easy to rebuild, like with Leeds when they lost to us, have managed to go on, storm through the Championship again and go up. You know, they were picked apart, but they've managed to recruit pretty well. It's a lot more difficult to do in League One. I was talking to Greg about how I remember that game, because I remember the Beast, if you remember rightly. He was the one who used to play for Wycombe Wanderers. I can't remember his name.
Akinkenwa.
So he played his last game in the playoff finals against Sunderland after they beat MK Dons. So that was his last ever game for him before leaving them. Obviously they lost to Sunderland anyway, and that was, I think, around all the time that all of the documentaries and bits and pieces were going on. Yeah, so obviously after he was let go, you know, we'll have a look at his full-time in charge. So he was in charge of 83 games. He won 41, drew 14, and lost 28, averaging now 1.65 points per game. So it's climbing. That's 0.04 if you're keeping count. So, you know, good for him. He had a couple of months off between that time. So after he was laid off in December, he was picked up by Oxford United in March 2023. And he had one of those fantastic new manager bounces where he won 4 out of 5 games and ended up getting Manager of the Month again, because, you know, you'll do that if you win 4 out of 5 games. But he left in November 2023 after 29 games in charge. So during his short stint in Oxford United, he managed 14 wins, 7 draws, 8 losses, with an average of 1.69 points per game. So again, steadily climbing. The reason that he left Oxford United was because he was offered a job at Bristol City. And him and his assistant, a bloke known as Chris Hogg, who I'm sure he will go wherever he goes with him, joined Bristol City in 2023, signing until 2027, which is where he currently resides. And obviously, as we know recently, a failed playoff bid with Bristol City. His City career has been a bit more varied. It's been, you know, longer for starters. So most of the time we're talking a singular season. So he's been there since 2023, and he's managed to win 28 games, draw 25, and lost 29. So the average has dropped, but as I said, he's also been here a whole season more. And so yeah, that's kind of his career up until now. One of the upsetting taglines that I also sent to Greg as a sneak peek was that apparently he favours a high possession and a high press style of football. You know, if he goes to Southampton, people have talked about how it might be nice for him to continue his 3 at the back, which is sure is something. However, according to Transfer Market, his typical formation is 4-2-3-1. So who knows? Maybe it will change a little bit. Right, but then obviously I like to do my other little thing, which is the agents and the agencies he's part of. So he's part of a company known as Refuel Performance Management, which the more I see these names of these companies, the more fun I'm having. They all just sound like different energy drinks. It's great. Their most expensive player on their books is Alfie Doherty, who plays for Luton. I think he's worth 8 million. So it's not like a hugely, let's say, prestigious agency, but they have a fair few amount of players on there. A lot of Championship players. You've got a lot of people from Wrexham, a lot of sort of Ipswich, Norwich, that sort of area. There's quite a few. There is a Saints link there, Adli Mohammed, who is one of the goalkeepers for us in the Premier League 2. I think he's had like 20 appearances or something like that. He is part of that agency, and also former Saints goalkeeping coach Andrew Sparks, who is now at QPR, is also part of that agency. One of the things to look out for before I put some questions to the floor is that, like every manager that's been linked with us, he has also been linked with Leicester because apparently that's just going to be the story now, right? Because obviously Ipswich probably not going to get rid of theirs. Us and Leicester coming down, we're kind of seen as a hot commodity for any manager that's up and coming that probably wants to maybe take the next step up without immediately getting a job in the Premier League. He's also recently been linked with Norwich as well. I think that what you said, Greg, I've written down here that it would feel like a very Russell Martin style appointment, right? Not only because apparently they play similar, like he literally took over MK Dons directly after him. It's very much sort of a he's risen through the ranks. Can he do it again? Not as an illustrious playing career as like Martin, obviously, but he's also shown what he can do with limited resources. It's weird how history repeats itself. My only worry with this is that, it would be a repeat of history repeating itself. We've come up against him as Saints before as well. He was in charge when they beat us 3-1 in February last year. So, yeah, he's consistently worked his way up through leagues. As I said, he's had a bit of experience abroad and here, from, Belgium to League One to, the Championship. And that's pretty much his career up until now.
It sounds
so maybe...
Yeah, it sounds like an interesting one. Obviously, I think we've got a fairly specific mould of manager in mind. I think, but I think, as you said earlier, like realistically, where we are as a club, we're either going for young up and coming, potential into excellence, which has been a big, strap thing at the club over the years, or we're going old school, someone that's been around the block. Because you're not going to get a combination of both, because they're the ones that cost the most money and are probably already employed in reality. So, I'd personally rather go down the route of taking a chance. But the trouble with it is, if they do poorly, then all of a sudden it's, Sport Republic are terrible and we need to get rid of them and this, that, and the other.
It's difficult, right? Because there's not a lot of wiggle room for it to go wrong.
Not this time round.
Exactly.
And that's the other problem.
And then the other problem of it is, if they do really well, straight away, who's going to come sniffing for them?
Get poached,
Is it going to be a short-term appointment, long-term?
Well, that's
just
exactly what I take away from what you've been saying about Liam Manning's career today, is that he's quite happy to jump ship up the ranks at any point. So if a bigger club comes sniffing, what's going to stop him?
I don't know. I think he's been very sort of happy at Bristol City, and he's had some personal tragedy as well that I think will probably, in my opinion, reaffirm his loyalty to Bristol City. But it's something that, from a footballing perspective, it's not really worth paying attention to in the sense of, like, it's not his career, but he unfortunately lost his son, and that has meant that he took an extended period of time off. And I think that, when, from an employer's perspective, I think that you are more likely to show loyalty to somebody that stuck by you through a tragedy like that. And again, a lot of these links are first sort of day out of the Championship, like first sort of day that we were confirmed into the Championship. Ivan Juric has been fired, right? And they basically picked probably the 3 up-and-coming managers, and they consistently appear on all the same lists. And those 3 are Danny Roll, Will Still, and Liam Manning, as kind of people that would fit into this sort of mold of what we want to go for. But we're kind of getting to a point now where we've had a couple of sort of manager profiles for a couple of like up and coming managers or potential managers. We've obviously got the other ones. After we have a message from our partners at Zencastr, where I've got both of you here now, I would like to ask both of your opinions on where you think it's going to go next and who you think we might appoint. What you'd be happy with, if Liam Manning would be something you're happy with. But yeah, first, a word from our partners at Zencastr.
Okay, so here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform, and Zencastr came out the clear winner, with 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs. It's super easy to start podcasts. It sounds great, and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description and learn more about Zencastr.
And we're back. So, as I alluded to, obviously we've done a couple of these manager profiles now. There's not going to be a huge amount left unless the odds start changing. And they are, in some respects, more down the bottom than up the top. I guess as we start to see where people go and the seasons actually wrap, we'll start to probably get more of a understanding as to where people's headspace are at. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey so far. So is everyone still on the roll train? Let's start with that. Oscar?
I think I'm not sure Roll is expressing much of an interest at the moment, judging by what his comments have been recently. Look, I know he's not ruling anything out necessarily. I do think there's an element of, I understand he's probably been frustrated at Sheffield, and there's nothing wrong with confidence, but I do feel like recently it's been breaching a little bit in towards, maybe not arrogance is a strong word, but it's quite a big jump to say I'm going to go from Sheffield Wednesday to the Premier League or the top of the Premier League or challenging for Europe or the Bundesliga. Fair play if it's going to happen. But, if that's his aspirations, then is he going to want to have another season in the Championship?
It's difficult, right? Because you look at where he went after he left us, and when you're assistant to Bayern Munich and stuff like that, and it's the actual German national team, I think he's just naturally going to have bigger aspirations. Yeah. And you're right. I think that some of the things that haven't maybe turned completely, and I know that a lot of people are very much still thinking, "Oh, it's going to be great." Is that it just doesn't? It's not like it's weird that he's our leading candidate, but he hasn't really talked about expressing a massive interest with us. I think he was back January time, and now it seems to sort of be like, well, actually, there's opportunity elsewhere, and it's like I'd hate for us to be a consolation prize. So, Greg, where are you on the roll train? Do you have a favoured managerial appointment? If not him,
I think it's a tough one. The more we talk about it and the more I think about it, the more I think there isn't a correct answer, certainly that's going to please everyone. I still think that Roll's a good fit if he wants to come. But actually, of all of the manager profiles you've done so far, I think the most interesting prospect is Will Still. Comes with a bit of media attention as well, I think, which is always a good thing. I don't know. I would be just as interested if we hired some random South American manager out of the blue that none of us have ever heard of and never seen come in. I'm in for the ride, whatever happens, I guess is the real answer. I just hope it's good.
I think we're all in for the ride no matter what, right? I'm favouring towards Will Still, and I think that the reason being is that the mix of multiple different sort of his background is interesting, and that mix of being able to do well abroad at multiple different places, whatever you can say about the coaching badges, the fact that he kind of wanted to try and break into the Championship last season, didn't manage to get in because he applied for the Sunderland job. I think it would just be a bit of you allow someone to form that identity. The only problem is the lack of Championship experience, but also at the same time, how else do you get experience by getting the job, right? And this is the problem we had where you remember there was the merry-go-round of sort of when we joke about things like Big Sam and stuff. It's because for a long period of time there was a merry-go-round where all of the same it was just the same managers at every single club. You could carbon copy paste. Whereas now I think it is quite different, and I think the Championship is a very good sort of battleground for that. But I also land on the page where, I just don't think anybody's going to be wholly happy with an appointment, because I don't think that there is a one-size-fits-all for what the challenges are for our club. There's no easy, simple transitionary period because we have rebuilt our identity so many times over the last couple of years. We used to have this thing called the Southampton way, and I haven't seen that mentioned in forever. I don't know if there is a specific Southampton way. The big thing for the Southampton way is focusing on the youth, apparently. But even that is kind of upset by this idea of the multi-club model where they are bringing in young players, but then sending them off straight away to Turkey and elsewhere. So it's I feel like it would be, you don't want to build your entire identity around a new manager, but also I think that you need a manager with enough charisma and enough understanding of the situation we're in to do that. And I think Russell Martin had the charisma. It just, when the naivety to getting into the Premier League is what I think blew him completely out of the water. And now you've got a situation where whoever replaces him, you've just got to hope that if we can do it again, it doesn't happen the next time around. Like, unfortunately, as much as, Ruska's annoyed us with the Leicester game, he managed to pull off a masterclass by just completely frustrating Man City to the point where they were throwing their toys out of the pram. Players who are like worth hundreds of £1 million, more than most of our club is worth, being upset that they couldn't play football because no one else was there to play, and it's like so like it shows that I can't remember, somebody commented on our post that basically said we would be higher than Manchester United right now if we'd played like that all season, and that's nuts to think about, and it's awful. I don't know if I'd want to watch that, but having that like pragmatism and intelligence to switch things up when things go bad, and hopefully we won't have that level of naivety where we all knew that we were conceding tons of goals in the Championship. Why we just thought that would go away in the Premier League, I don't know. But like, maybe there'll be a bit more of a plan now, and I just think that whoever comes in will need to get the fans on board probably nice and early. And but I also don't want them to rush the appointment. And the fact that there are so many points here is why it's such a problem to pick a manager.
Yeah.
So, Oscar, did you just before I finish off, did you actually have a preferred managerial appointment?
Yeah, I was fully on board with Danny Role until obviously started expressing desires. I'm not against Will still. I'm not against. My one slight thing with it is the Championship is a league I think that does require experience. I'm not saying it has to be. Not saying it has to be a Sam Allardyce or whatever, but you look at the managers that have recently gone up. Scott Parker's had a couple of years in there. Chris Wilder, Daniel Farker, very experienced, like Championship manager and getting promotion. When it was Brentford, if we're looking at their model, Dean Smith's the one that came in, got them promoted, solidified them in the league, and then they moved on to a Thomas Frank, a bit more of a fancy or a bit more of a flary name, shall we say? And my wondering with Saints is how often recently have we ended up with a manager that we thought early on. Quite a lot of them recently have come out of a bit of left field fairly late on and then suddenly gathered a lot of momentum. So entirely possible it might be someone we've not spoken about at all.
100%.
In fact, I would probably err unlikely with that. I don't think we'll go down the route of back down an old manager. I think the Russell Martin thing, I don't think that's a goer for anyone. I wouldn't be upset if Hasenhuttl fancied another go and everyone was all for it. But again, I don't see it happening. It's not a normal thing. It just feels like it wouldn't work. So, yeah, I think just keep an open mind with it. As long as they've got a little bit of charisma, because that was always my thing. It is an entertainment business at the end of the day. I'm not saying the football always has to be, I'm not against grinding out a 0-0 draw, but I do like a manager that's got a bit of charisma. I struggled with Claude Puel, if I'm brutally honest.
That is, I think, 100% a reason that he struggled as much as he did. And I think we did an episode a long time back. I don't remember. I don't think you'd even joined at that point where you were saying, Greg, that you want more characters in football, right? Yeah. You were missing the amount of Jose Mourinho's we have and kind of stuff like that. And I think that is important. And that was a big, I think, strike against Ivan Juric, is that you could see the passion there when we won that one game that he was there for, but at the same, other than that, when your press conferences are 5 minutes long and all you're hearing is kind of well, this player's not being played. Why is he not being played? And then you don't hear any. You do, I think, the charisma to be able to. So yeah, it'll be interesting either way.
One Championship veteran who I'd be fully on board with, that I think Sandra would lose her mind. But if Neil Warnock came about and fancied another go,
I'm 100% in.
All for it.
Yeah. You talk about characters in football. He is right up there with one of my favourite characters in football.
Yeah, 100%.
I remember when we saw him at Wembley, Greg, because obviously I was in Corpo, sort of businessy bits, right, for player finals, because I got tickets from my workplace, and it was this close to him, you can hear him. It's incredible. You can hear him doing his punditry from a mile away. It's fantastic. But yeah, I think that you guys have hit the nail on the head. It is just keeping an open mind. There are some prospects that look more attractive, but at the same time, on paper, you've seen, unless it's going to be like that one time that Everton had Ancelotti, which was just insane. you're right. We just kind of have to hope that who comes in has been picked for the right reasons. But I can also fully understand that people don't really trust Sports Republic to do that. But what can we do? We're not the ones making those decisions. We're not the ones that own the club. All we can do is try and bring you as much information as we can on the multiple different targets. And you're right. What's going to happen is that 2 weeks before they make an appointment, all of the odds will change. All of the stuff that I've done will be wasted, other than the fact that people have got the entertainment value about me talking about a bunch of random managers. And that kind of feels like my degree, where I did a bunch of essays on a bunch of historical topics that now, if you ask me anything about them, I don't know. So you're right. It is the best use of my degree. But it's been an absolute pleasure. Next week, we'll see. We'll see. I might at some point, much to everyone's upset, have to cover at least the managerial career of Steven Gerrard, because I'm not gonna cover his like playing career. We don't have enough time. But that is becoming a more and more like a better prospect. Apparently, I don't really know why. I don't know if he's going to get let go from where he's currently at or what. But
not for me.
I don't know, mate. I'm going to have to give my season ticket up for my missus if that's the case. That's the problem. Genuinely.
But right, so obviously we've still got 2 games left to get through. We'll probably have something for tomorrow. We don't not have a crossover. Unfortunately, our daily Everton guys aren't available. So yeah, we'll figure out something as we always do, and we will see you in the next one. If you liked what you listened to, we're on all the social medias: Facebook, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. We've been having a bit of a whale of a time over there. We'll often try and respond to as much as possible as well, because I'm chronically online, not so much Greg and Oscar. But I usually have it all up while I play games. So there's that. But thank you very much for listening, and we will catch you in the next one.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.